Okay, my topic is quality assurance in learning and development, imperatives of cultural shift. I know in terms of flow, maybe this could have come maybe before some of those discussions that we had yesterday, but very great discussions. A lot of those insights resonating with what is in here. I heard what Dr. Lowe said that if you're not current, you cannot be correct. I don't know how current I am here, so in case there are some incorrect stuff inside this, please pardon me, and we can have a discussion at the end for all of us to be richer in knowledge. So quality assurance, so I have 50 minutes to navigate this. So quality assurance in learning and development, cultural imperatives. The imperatives of cultural shift there. So just 5 subheadings for us to navigate it. Just unpacking the concept of quality assurance, getting into some of the impetus that is leading to the need for more quality assurance in L&D programs, and then the shifts that are happening there in terms of the mindset around quality assurance in L&D programs. I just injected there some critical success factors. I think I've already heard quite a bit about discussions around things like that yesterday, and then a bit of an injection too of COVID-19 and the little dimension of spin it's putting around the necessity for quality assurance in L&D programs. So from a conceptual connotation point of view, resonating very well with what I've heard, what I discussed yesterday. Quality assurance is the process we use in defining and assuring the quality standards of deliverables in any endeavor, whether it's learning, production, sales, whatever we do. So apart from defining the standards, it also encompasses the process that we use in meeting those standards. So it's both the, I mean, if we are doing measurement and evaluation, we say leading and lagging indicators. So it's both the end state and the pathway to get to the end state. Just by way of character of good quality assurance programs, they should be proactive, that is, well wired down up front, so that going into the processes, going into that which we are doing, that we are trying to assure quality around, because of the framework of quality assurance, we'll be able to prevent errors in design and production. So I think I've heard the last button there, the last bullet there was also said yesterday that is doing the right things the right way. So just that first bullet is just around the theoretical level of quality assurance, that it refers to a kind of a systematic, structured, and continuous attention to quality, both in terms of how that quality is maintained and how it is continually improved. So if I may just bring all of that together in that first bullet, it's about defining, it's about having a systematic structure and structured continuous process, and it's about standards that are maintained and improved upon. So when you take all of that and overlay it over learning and development, it is around producing principles that frame our time-honored assurance of learning towards the goal of ensuring quality and effectiveness in our teaching and learning efforts, including assessment of student learning. So in the learning space, it is this systematic and structured process that ensures that all we do in the education, training, and development space are delivered and produced to achieve a clearly defined set of outcomes. And I just put there, which kind of ties everything together, that quality assurance is a culture, not just an activity. is a culture that intends that, you know, from a cultural point of view, two big elements that we should bear in mind that make it not to be an activity. From a cultural point of view, there must be some psychological framework that all stakeholders subscribe to that represents some kind of shared values, shared beliefs, shared expectations, and commitment towards quality. So it won't just be one stakeholder, maybe the learners, for example, but the providers, the society, the government, the industry, having a shared psychological, if I may use that word, but more of shared values, shared beliefs and expectations that kind of govern the whole work of quality assurance. And then secondly, apart from just those shared psychological beliefs, the structure, the system, the managerial process which enhances quality and coordinated by different individuals should also be paid attention to. So those two things have to be there for us to really say, oh, we have a culture of quality assurance. Do we have a shared belief system? And do we have systems and procedures that drive it? So those are just nuggets to talk about it at the theoretical level and then lowering it into our learning and development space. I just pulled this one out from this work, and I was just saying, as I was just looking around, I saw that maybe not everybody has the same mindset around what quality is actually. So different people, it's like a big elephant. People come to it and describe it maybe in a little bit of different ways, but this is like a kind of aggregation of the different thoughts and ways of thinking about quality that I found there, and it's adapted from that work by Wati. It's a bit dated now, 2003. But when we think about quality, we should think about something being exceptional, that's with excellence and all of that, something of a perfection, consistency. Well, perfection may not be a very good word, but it's a bit aspirational, that we are aspiring to when this thing will be so good that everybody will say, yeah. And then fitness for purpose, value for money, and transformation. So I just tried to lower us a little bit into that concept of quality in the quality assurance effort. Everybody doesn't have to agree in it, but I think reasonably we should be able to know what we're talking about when we say quality in quality assurance. So, impetus for quality assurance in L&D. What are some of the things there? They are not exhaustive. What are some of the things there that are driving the greater need for more acute quality assurance in our L&D programs? There's a big growing social demand for higher education and diversity in L&D offerings. A lot of push there. If you just overlay that one over the second bullet that talks about the push by different stakeholders to get students or participants in our programs to gain skills and competencies in fields that are important for economic development. Those first two bullets kind of come together. Of course, there's a social demand for education and skills just pushing out there. When you check research information, the hunger for more education, for more skills, and all of that is forever on the upswing. But just quickly marry that one with the fact that all stakeholders are clamoring for education, training and development, learning and development type activities to be geared towards getting the participants to gain skills and competencies in fields that are important for economic development. And so one of the primary roles of quality assurance in L&D is to ensure that there is a relevance and credibility of all the interventions we make in the ETD space in connection with the need, the actual need that is out there. And I think that kind of speaks to what I heard that Dr. Olowe also said yesterday around being current and being correct. So that everything we do can be put in the, people can see a connection between them and life in general. Life meaning economic life and every other thing that leads to human development. So, and that is putting up emphasis around, look, whatever we are doing in this space needs to be assessed, needs to be queried, needs to be interrogated to ensure that there is a connection between what is being offered and what is truly required. And certain imperatives are actually driving some of all of that. There's the push for more reskilling and upskilling. I don't need to go so much into the details of that. A lot of competitiveness in the business landscape, rising complexity all over us. Of course, the big digital revolution that all of us are aware about that is shaping the nature of work, even multi-generational workforce issues. All of those are creating new dynamic around what is really required in the marketplace at the end of the day. And therefore, there is need to continue to insert quality assurance to make sure there's a nexus between that which we are doing in the ETD space and what is required. So the internationalization of L&D is also another push. The borders are now really very, very transparent. We can go through them very easily. People can subscribe to anything from any part of the world. And with that, there is higher push for more rigorous and robust quality assurance systems to ensure that what one is subscribing to, we actually deliver the value at the end of the day. And which connects to the next one, value for money in L&D interventions. All this money I'm paying, how is it going to change my life at the end of the day? And then increase adoption of instructional technologies, of course. And we're going to talk about that one a little bit later. With all that is happening in that space, we need help to ensure that with all of that adoption, we are getting value for what we are paying money for. So those are just some of the drivers out there in the macro system. And the shifts, now moving on to the shifts. And I'm just focusing on only two main shifts there, around teaching and learning and then around assessments. And I guess everybody's already very connected with this. The shift in focus from teacher-centered learning to learner-centered learning. And all of us are educators, so I may not need to spend much time on explaining what the learner-centered kind of learning contains. So learning outcomes under the learner-centered approach are stated in terms of what a learner is expected to know. Prior to now, there was more emphasis around that what to know and understand. But now a greater push to what I'm able to do with what I know. I heard a maxim about 3 weeks ago in a graduation ceremony somewhere outside here that what you do with the knowledge that you have is far more important than the knowledge that you carry. And therefore, how are my learning interventions tuned to converting that knowledge to ability to do something? That is the shift in emphasis, in focus. Instructional methodologies too, they'll be shifting focus on skills and practices that engender, shifting to skills and practices that engender independent problem solving and lifelong learning, as opposed to that which we used to experience before now. And then the learning participants, the learner participates. I think I heard this one as part of what also came out of yesterday. The learner participates actively and responsibly in choosing what and how they prefer to learn. That's a big growing recognition for the fact that all of us construct learning in different ways, and therefore it's not a one-size-fits-all. And therefore, quality assurance is moving from just a focus from just that you have provided it but to how that provision spoke to the individual differences of the learners in the room, in terms of their interests, in terms of their abilities, in terms of their learning styles. And then just the transition of the role of the facilitator or the teacher from just teaching to facilitating. So those are just broad strokes. All of us, I guess, are already very familiar with that transition. And if that transition is happening in the macro environment around us, in my own individual L&D intervention, how is it being constructed to reflect that transition? I just put this one there. I think Bloom's taxonomy, all of us are very aware about it. I only put it there. For me, I think it was the great enabler that enabled it kind of facilitated the discussion in that transition we just talked about in the previous slide. Bloom originally putting out the taxonomy, I think 1956 or so, which was an attempt to create a framework for levels of understanding, for levels of cognitive gain, based on different activities that we might do in the classroom, or maybe even the different assignments that we might actually have for our learning participants. So, as you know, that original framework has been interrogated quite a bit by different researchers, advancement in psychology, and all of that has kind of fed into the previous slide in terms of moving more from the teacher-centered to the learner-centered emphasis in learning and development, and which led to the creation of the extension of the top of the triangle of Bloom's taxonomy that now included creativity to creation and all of that. But I only just inserted it there. All of us are aware about it. But that for me, it was the big facilitator of the dialogue that was responsible for that transition. So that is about teacher-centered, moving on to learner-centered, and therefore quality assurance, interrogating what we do today to ensure that truly they are learner-centric. And then the assessment side, more emphasis on the formative. I just put that small cartoon there that represents, from that source there, represents what we do in the learner-centered assessment space. But just saying, in terms of assessment, the shift in focus is towards more continuous assessment rather than an event, and is deeply wired into end-to-end in the learning and development process. And like all of us know, it prioritizes feedback more than the end state one-time evaluation. And it focuses on producing very rich bodies of evidence, which flows from different approaches of assessment kind of tasks that we give. And then it focuses on engaging the learner as an active partner, just like we mentioned in the previous one, in setting learning goals and how they construct learning and all of that. So all of us very familiar with that formative way, the formative assessment. It doesn't negate the summative. Both still have their own relevance, but the push generally is more towards formative. So critical success factors for me in terms of ensuring proper Q and quality assurance in L&D programs. In light of all that we have discussed in the first few slides, first for me is just let our own learning and development interventions and mechanisms be tuned to the modern learner. Quality assurance mechanisms will come and interrogate what we are doing in that space to make sure that that which we are doing is tuned to the modern learner. A piece of research here, and you see the different sources of the research in terms of links under that the modern learner, the average modern learner is overwhelmed by all kinds of different inflow of information and all the things that are going on in the environment, the social dynamics of society that are evolving and all of that kind of thing. He's overwhelmed, he's distracted. Hardly do you get people's attention well in classes these days without them touching their phones or doing something or all kinds of distractions. And then that the modern learner is impatient. Again, research points to that. And different things make them impatient, particularly when you are throwing learning opportunities at them from the angle that they cannot construct the learning from. Many are on the go type people. And you are not just talking about younger generation, even the more mature generation has taken on the ball. So if these are true about the modern learner, how are my learning and development interventions connecting with the modern learner in the reality of these dynamics? So for our quality assurance programs to be successful, to have meaning, they will be focusing on how we are coming through in terms of tuning our programs to suit the modern learner. Okay, I just added this one as well, also from research. The modern learner, much as we talked about being overwhelmed and all of that in the previous slide, 49% from this research said they still prefer to learn at the point of need. What do I need at this time? Don't suffocate me with what I don't need. 68% of employees prefer to learn at work. And then 58% of employees prefer opportunities to learn at their own pace. This is just small sliver of some research information. I'm only putting it there to just say the onus lies on us to think more rigorously around the beneficiaries of our L&D interventions to ensure that we are connecting with that mind that is called the modern learner, so that our L&D interventions will be constructed appropriately, and then the quality assurance programs will be checking on that for us to say we are having meaningful quality assurance programs. So second criterion for me is clarity of purpose in our quality assurance programs in L&D. I know there's a big debate around accountability of improvement, but for me, both of them are in play. But bottom line, the quality assurance should be demand-led, should be based on a strategy that speaks to the needs and context of the macro environment. So my quality assurance program cannot be measuring what is not relevant to the stakeholders. Thirdly, employers, I think for quality assurance to really have meaning in the L&D space, we need to, and it's connected to number 2 as well, we need to know what we are measuring to make sure that it's relevant. So employers, it requires employers that are able to define their scarce and needed critical skills and bring all of that information to bear constructively in the L&D ecosystem. So if there's no loop between where these skills are being used, if there's no loop of information back into the L&D ecosystem, players in the L&D ecosystem will just be doing what excites them. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be making much impact out there. And then when you do quality assurance, it's not really paying anybody any good. Number 4 is consistency and coherence of standards and quality across all levels. And I think I heard something about stakeholders yesterday as well. So for quality assurance to be successful in the L&D space, there should be coherence. And then consistency. Coherence intra the quality assurance process. And then consistency in terms of inter across levels among stakeholders generally, whether government, organizations, institutions, management development partners, and all of that. 5 for me is the interactivity between internal and external. I think I heard some good discussion about internal yesterday. There's a greater push for more internal That's where real sustainability of the standards can be worked upon and assured. But there should be a balance of both and a proper value-adding interactivity between the two for quality assurance to really make meaning for us in the L&D space. So also for quality assurance to be successful and great and give us the value that we need, I talked about the culture at the beginning, having a shared mindset and beliefs and all of that. We all should have an improvement-focused follow-up mentality. So if the quality assurance throws up gaps, throws up ways to go for us to be able to get to certain standards, there must be a great determination and commitment to funnel that kind of feedback into action. Otherwise, it just an exercise of what I mean, just paperwork and nobody getting any value out of it. And then lastly, regular and cyclical quality assurance monitoring, which I mentioned before, is not a one-time thing. It's not a great event. Oh, we had a great quality assurance some years ago, activities some years ago. It should be continuous, it should be cyclical, and one stage will feed the next. So those are some of my own suggested quality in critical success factors. The last area for me is COVID-19 and the quality assurance in L&D. The things that are beginning to stare at us there and that are pushing for more quality assurance effort in the L&D space, even in the current environment of thinking that we are finding ourselves, and the emerging one as well. A lot has been said about COVID and the pandemic impact, and I'm sure many of us have been in different sessions where we have had discussions around that. But the major fallout of it is the disruption that has led to deeper and broader adoption of digital learning. And all of us know the precious and, well, let me start from the positive, the excitement and the precious and to some extent distress that it has put on L&D professionals. Not just L&D professionals, but also the learners themselves. Many of us have had to struggle in the business school where I am. Of course, it's a no-brainer anymore. That was what 99% of schools and business schools and universities did all over. We had only 2 weeks to move all our programs, as we did last year, online, because people have paid fees, big fees, and all of that. So some of that was being done before, but the changeover was so drastic that the faculty that have been skirting around the fringes of digital capabilities before then had only days and nights that you can count on one hand, on the fingers of one hand, to become quickly fluent in it. Of course, everybody has launched out so well since then, but many people are at different points in that journey. And therefore, what is that one doing to the quality of the learning and development intervention they are providing? It's not only from the professional side of it, but the learner side of it, difficulties in really navigating learning, given the explosion of the digital learning capabilities that have come around us. So for both groups, that's both the learners and L&D professionals, there are some pockets of lack of confidence around technology. Some pretend around it and just let the course come and go. And that is because of different levels of discomfort with different things around just anything being done digitally. what does that do to the quality of the ability to do side of our teaching and learning process? Are such participants able to convert the some level of knowledge they gain from that learning and development intervention to that level of ability to create? Some of us have issues around loss of the natural interactivity. I mean, when you are in our MBA classes and executive education classes, I mean, you feel the energy in the room. Cases are being discussed. There's a lot of vibe. To suddenly now move to a cold-blooded laptop in front of you, it wasn't easy. For some, they've not still fully converted. And some of the participants too. And that's why we're not doing hybrid. Some just say, sorry, I can't sit down in my house to learn. But that seeming loss, so-called loss of interactivity, which is for a lot of people a tonic, whether on the provider side or the recipient side. The absence of it, what is it doing to learning and development, the quality of it? Because the mental and physical stress of just struggling with digital issues. Just now, I just went through the pain of seeing that my camera is no longer working, maybe because coffee poured on my laptop. I have to put on another one quickly. And it can be stressful. It doesn't mean that digital learning doesn't have its own upside. It does. Like all of us know, many things are now being done. People having the flexibility to learn from wherever they are and not having to spend money commuting and all of that. But issues still remain, issues of accessibility, issues of affordability, issues of flexibility. How is the teaching and learning being done? Of course, and all the downstream issues of internet connections and all of that. So I just put some points out there in a staccato way to just, these are things we're already living with around us, but we carry them and put in the L&D space. What is happening in terms of the interventions that are happening there? And therefore, how are we going to be fine-tuning quality assurance mechanisms to ensure that we are chasing down the right standards in this new environment where everyone is still, some have matured, some are still struggling, and some are not even able to get into it at all. And yet, learning and development is somehow going on. So that's just the COVID-19 side of it. And so I just put this one there to just say, okay, the quality assurance thing goes on. It must continue to grow in terms of its ruggedness and its ability to chase down those standards in every manner of way, no matter how the L&D efforts are being put out. So I just put it here, say some considerations that we should be having around quality assurance in today's environment of digital learning. Providers, institutions, management development agencies, and all of that, their belief systems, their philosophy, which shape what is done in the teaching and learning process, must be properly calibrated to make sure the purpose is clear, the teacher's role is clear, the methods are clear, and the value that we're going to get out of it in terms of reaching that apex of the participant being able to do something on account of that L&D intervention in the digital space. That must be clarified in our beliefs and philosophy statement. So we must have consideration for the contemporary and emerging in-demand skills. Do we know the in-demand skills that are emerging? The World Economic Forum has a lot of information around that. And it's not just an apple hanging in the sky. Nigeria is part of where they surveyed for that. Beyond the World Economic Forum, there are a lot of other things here that are pointing to these are the skills that are required. So given all that has happened in the COVID space, the pandemic space, and all that it has done in the L&D space, if I may ask, Emmanuel Imafidon, are you still using the exact same curriculum that you used in teaching that your human resource management course 4 years ago, 3 years ago? Are you still using it today?
Yes.
Before now, it might not have been dated. But now, given what has happened from late 2019, all through 2020, and down to 2021, and still unfolding even into some unknown ways in 2022 and going forward, must make me to go and refresh that curriculum, particularly around the in-demand skills. If I was teaching negotiations before, now people are doing big-time negotiations on digital platforms remotely. The skills to negotiate face-to-face, where I see all the body language and all the cues happening, might not be the same skills I use. I will need to negotiate big deals successfully on digital platforms. So how do I teach negotiation skills in the environment of using digital learning platforms in a world where digital capabilities are being deployed rapidly, compared with 4 years ago when things were a little bit different? So the question is to all of us. So for quality assurance framework to be meaningful, it should be measuring the right thing. And what is the right thing that we are doing today? How is my curriculum today reflective of in-demand and contemporary skills? Fit for purpose learning methods for different participants. Different participants have different needs. So I should be facilitating an optimal learning environment. Not just the learner alone, but the environment of learning. So all the things around social learning, all the things around formal learning, all the things around informal learning. How am I subscribing to all those spaces to curate learning and development interventions from a fit for purpose point of view? Quality assurance will have to trail its light on top of that, given all that we have experienced in the last 2 years. Online assessment is another capability that we need to now do. Some of us are still trying to fine-tune ourselves, but there are very user-friendly digital capabilities today that we can use in raising our game with respect to that. And they can easily be reviewed by quality assurance mechanisms. So we should try to have considerations for getting more nimble using those digital technologies for online assessments. And then lastly, they're getting comfortable with digital instructional capabilities, which enable synchronous and asynchronous learning. It's all part of raising our game in terms of our ability to lay out learning and development opportunities for participants, for subscribers, for beneficiaries of education, learning, and training and development in the current world we are. The movement is only in one direction. It's not moving in zigzag. First of all, it's not moving backwards. It's not standing still. It's not moving backwards. It's not moving zigzag. It's only moving in one direction. Fine, we're talking about hybrid and all of that, but just check that evolutionary process of the hybrid. We will be seeing a deeper and deeper and deeper and more pervasive injection of technology enablement. And therefore, for us in the learning and development space, we must find ways to hook onto that, make sure our L&D efforts are structured in contemporary ways, and then the quality assurance will follow suit. So those are the few things I wanted to lay out around the topic of quality assurance and the cultural imperatives for change that has been laid out as the topic. So I will stop there and turn it over to the moderator in terms of having questions and answers. Thank you very much.